All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again. We're gonna continue our discussion that we've been really enjoying and learning so much from. And uh, I don't know. Having these conversations to me just sort of really they equip me. I feel sounds really vain to say this. I feel wiser for having these discussions. I feel much more equipped for having these things, um, because stuff comes up that we normally don't consider. And so recording this today is really fun because outside we were talking about this a little bit earlier in the lead up in the prepping for this video today. We were talking about the storms outside and talking about how we love them, how a good storm can be fun and a little exciting at times. And I was sitting in the office earlier this morning and we had a thunder and lightning strike. It hit right outside the building and it shook the whole building, which got me excited. But it's fun and so kind of using this as a springboard for today and talking about storms and talking about how life just happens. Um, we've talked about how change is important and necessary in terms of the recovery process and going through recovery. But I think I want to kind of address that change on the storm side of things, like with life just happening and just how does that change um, impact those who are, whether they're in the middle of recovery or in the middle of addiction, and life happens, whether a loved one passes away or there's an accident or a job transition or housing transition, and maybe not necessarily on the part of the user, the addict, but maybe someone close to them experiences a transition or a life change. And the reason why I'm wanting to kind of like talk about that a little bit is more along the lines of uh, I guess maybe just for helping us have a better understanding and maybe even an empathy for those that are in, like, an understanding of we don't know what shakes other people, right?
Right.
And so if a healthy person is shaken by their their elderly parent having to go into a home, how much would that impact a user? Um, does that make sense in that kind of that
No, I
tone?
understand what you're saying.
So, and I guess that some of us we're going to be talking about some changes that we're not familiar with, we have not gone through ourselves, um, but others certainly have. So, um, kind of an interesting thing, I guess. So I guess a question for you then would be what, and I'm trying to think of like how can I take this. Ever you got a question in your head and your question is not a singular sentence, it's a paragraph?
Sure.
And do you want to answer a paragraph or a singular sentence?
I know.
So I'm trying to take this big paragraph of a question I have in my head and putting it in a way where it
Spit it out. The whole
spit it out,
paragraph.
spit
If
out
you
the whole
get it.
paragraph. Oh goodness. So I guess my question then is this is that how do we, you know when life happens and the changes occur, I mean, and obviously it will change person to person, but because of the addict's mind being all about focusing on fulfilling the addiction, how does that regular life change that happens in their loved ones around them, um how does that impact the user? How does that impact the person in recovery?
Well, there's a difference between someone who's in recovery and someone who's actually using.
Yeah,
Obviously.
absolutely, absolutely. Like you said, you wanted the paragraph,
Yeah.
so there, there you go.
So, we'll. I guess we can kind of just address as an addict, your response is going to be go use.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to avoid um, any kind of feeling, and you'll avoid. Well, I should say I avoided all kinds of um, interactions,
Mm-hmm.
anything that would seem hard to um, to interact with somebody else, and if I felt like it was going to be a hard conversation, just wouldn't even show up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the difference in recovery is that, so let me say this first. So I feel like people who are in recovery
Mm-hmm.
almost have an advantage when it comes to this
Okay.
than somebody who just has never had an addiction or has,
Yeah.
where it's caused problems for them, you know. And the reason I say that is because um, in addiction, you've kind of gone through hell.
Yeah.
So when those big impactful things that happen in your life, um, you have an inner strength already that was built, you know. And then not only that, um, in your recovery, you've built this. I want to say house,
Right.
you know, but it's of people, you know, support and things like that. And let me tell you, they keep track of you. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like my friends are always participants in my life. They are very active and they are very curious.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little too nosy, you know, but
Right.
which is okay, you
Well,
know,
in the
because
recovery, you want that
right,
pointed into shape.
I kind of need that because it keeps me
Yeah.
grounded and honest, you know. So there's an advantage to that, so that when something big happens,
Mm-hmm.
you know, say a parent dies, um, the whole community, not even just your close people, but the people that you see
Mm-hmm.
but don't necessarily, you know, they're immediately there surrounding you,
Right.
you know, and they're like, what can I do? How can I help you through this? You know what I mean? And so it takes some of that pressure off of, okay, I don't have to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're going to have to go through your own feelings, your own thoughts, you know, everything else alone,
Right.
you know, because it's always in your head. Um, but you always have that support and, um, you, it doesn't, I'm not saying that it lessens uh, the impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
It lessens the part where you react.
Okay.
If does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, so um, my stepdad passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and had I been using, I wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have. I don't know what I would have done. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Because I wasn't using at the time, so
Right.
it made, you know. But I was able to process
Yeah.
what happened, um, process the whole idea that this person was no longer going to be physically in my life. You know, I mean, he's still there, for,
Yeah.
you know, in memory and everything else and pictures and stuff like that. But you know, so it was easier to process because I did have other people who were like, you know, you can talk to me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've been through this. That's a big bonus when somebody has been through what you are about to go through. You know, you, so they'll tell you, oh, this is what I did. This is what I did. And some of it you're gonna be like, whatever, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But just knowing that you don't have to do it alone, and that there is somebody who's probably gone before you in this particular, you know, maybe not exact situation, but you know, it lessens that impact, you know,
Yeah.
and um, and and on the other end of that is kind of what you were asking about is change,
Mm-hmm.
because everything changes, right?
Right.
You know, and you're right. As someone in recovery, you have to make changes
Right.
to uh, to stay clean.
Right.
You know, because if you do the same thing, you're gonna have the same result.
So one of the things I want to kind of interject in here too is one of the things that I'm hearing too on multiple sides, and correct me if I'm wrong, is on the one side you have the I'm gonna split them up into two camps, the active user and the recovery.
Mm-hmm.
The active user, whether it is by stress, by self medication to what they're feeling, their mind goes, I'm going to go use, I'm going to tone everything out and not implode, but block off the feelings.
Yeah.
and see that. Whereas the one in recovery is, um, it almost sounds like a boot camp of empathy.
It
You're
really happens.
because you have one the in recovery you're learning to be empathetic. You're learning about your feelings and feelings of others, and then but then if you're surrounded when you're surrounded by that group, that community of that the empathetic community, that's how are you, what do you need, I'm here for you, don't go down this path, I'm right here, and they're helping you, they're coming alongside you, and so it's like you can't get away from that, and this is where, like you said, they're at an advantage
Right.
over
Well,
just
they're
a
not,
standard healthy person.
right, and they're not there 24/7, so
No.
it's not like you couldn't go use if you
Right.
wanted. Let me also say that so in active addiction, um, and okay, I'll say me as an addict,
Mm-hmm.
I would have took advantage of a situation like this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, poor me. My stepdad passed away. Give me drugs. Give me
Right.
money. I don't know what to do with myself. Just this like wanting to utilize that sympathy. It's a manipulation.
Yeah.
And it's I look at it now and it's like, what kind of person does that?
Right.
But that's what you do as an addict.
That's a cool thing. I'm glad you said that. that manipulation kicks in.
It does
Because we do.
Oh, woe is me, poor me, and
Yeah.
and a lot of people will see a lot of people will see through that,
Mm-hmm.
but those who are going through it also probably won't see it because they're feeling that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not real for the addict. It's really not. It's a tool to get what they want,
Right.
because that's what it's all about. And I hate that that's the kind of person that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't speak for every addict because I don't know that that's how they
Right.
work, but when you're using drugs, you're a basic sociopath. You don't have feelings because you've stuffed them so far you wouldn't even know what they were anyhow.
Or the ones that you are expressing are hostile. And I say hostile. That does happen, and that's a kind of a broad term, because I mean, when I say hostile, I mean the whole idea. They're negative emotions. They're negative. Well, this person did this to me, and that's why I'm here, or that happened, and those negative, or it's all self-focused.
Right. It is. There is no.
And
it's the world revolves around me.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing I've witnessed too. When families experience change,
and
that self-focus,
and even when they don't want it to be like that, it still goes that way because it's just it's a familiar
mm-hmm.
feeling, situation, whatever you want to call it. So they just it's no longer you're not controlling what's going on with you,
right?
So excuse me, so the control takes over you.
Yeah.
If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole idea of, like, when you're driving a car down a dirt road, do you go into the rut? The car wants you have to fight to keep your car out of the ruts, because it naturally wants to go into that learned behavior, that learned process, and for the addict, that's what they've learned. I mean, we talked about addiction last time. We talked about the beast that it is, and even then, as we talked about the recovery and the whole nature of, like, why this conversation even exists, or why does the outreaches for the addicts exist in our community, and it's because there's a level of life control that has for you, and that life control it has for you. It doesn't care about what change you're going through, what storms you're facing. It doesn't care about it is a life control. It's like, nope, I need this.
Right.
And that's interesting when we consider that, even though, like, there's still that life control and that level of dependency upon the addiction, that even when that's happening, that life is still happening around that. There's still loss, there's still transition, there's still family dynamics.
So in recovery, when you come across things that haven't really happened,
mm-hmm.
Like these life-changing type of things, it's very scary because no matter how much you get away from the whole idea of using,
Mm-hmm.
it's still almost the first thought, like, oh, I just want to get high,
Mm-hmm.
and so it can be, it's, I don't know, for me, it can be scary sometimes because those are the moments
Mm-hmm.
where, I'm making a decision,
Right.
and I don't always make the best decisions because I still am an addict,
Mm-hmm.
so it gets scary for a person like myself, and but that's where the reliance on meetings, sponsor, and the community of recovering addicts
Right.
comes in and kind of uh, surrounds you
Mm-hmm.
and helps you through that. And if you just let yourself be okay with somebody else helping you, because a lot of us want to just, I can do it on my own.
Right.
I'm kind of stubborn that way,
Well,
but
that's a typical male response. I can do this.
well, any addict though,
Yeah.
I mean, even females, same thing.
Ladies, yeah.
Yeah, they're, because addiction is just, it's just a different thing. But
Yeah.
so the beauty of it, because it really is a beautiful thing,
Mm-hmm.
is that when you get through to the other side of that, you can look back and you can be proud of the person that you are, or
Mm-hmm.
at least be proud of the progress or the decision,
Right.
whatever it is that, occurred. You can be proud of that because you can look back and be like, wow, I really got through that,
Mm-hmm.
or I really did do that,
Yeah.
and and then you can start to recognize the tools that were necessary to get through that. Well, there's going to be something else that'll happen down the road, and so those tools, they go with you.
Yeah.
And so the next time that something tragic or overwhelming happens, it's a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easier emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying your decision making and the way you walk through it becomes a little easier because you can walk through it without having to make bad decisions.
Right.
An active addict, or an addict period, I guess, even in recovery, sometimes we don't know how to make the right decisions,
Right.
because we get blocked. It's like, I don't know what to do. And I know for me, um, through recovery, I have kind of not seen the change because those things will change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
you know and so by the decision you make is going to determine who you are at the end of that.
Yeah.
And if you make the right decisions, I mean, and I don't know what those decisions might be, but
Right.
if you make the right decisions for yourself to get through that, you'll be a better person, I think, on
Yeah.
the other end, because you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, I can make these decisions.
Right.
I do have the strength with um, God and with
Oh, yeah.
my surrounding people, and I can do this,
Yeah.
and that's a life changing for yourself,
Absolutely.
because suddenly you've built a little confidence in yourself, and that's a hell of a feeling when you start to realize that, being in recovery, you can, I want to say, be normal,
Mm-hmm.
but is it really a normal? It's just, I
Normal is a
think,
state of mind.
but you can make the right decisions.
Yeah.
You know.
I heard it's been said before. It does not originate, this phrase does not originate with me, but it's been said on radios and all over the place. Is that good choices have good consequences and bad choices have bad consequences. And so that whole idea of, like, whatever, there's always going to be a consequence for every action. There is an appropriate reaction, and so we see that level when it comes to this. And so for when change occurs, when the storms happen, there's there's always that choice is always there. How are you going to respond
Right.
to how are you going to respond to input A or input B?
Right.
And then you got to respond to those situations. And and I want to kind of build up on the whole idea of, like, what you're saying there. um, just a moment ago is that you start making certain choices, and then you realize, hey, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing, and that idea of making those right choices, those right decisions,
Right.
those good choices, right? The correct choice, the good choice, the responding in the appropriate way, and that while initially might seem difficult at first, and it takes a certain level of strength, you get the feeling of like, well, wow, look what I did. That
Right.
right, that self fulfillment. Hey, I accomplished this big thing, and then the next time, it just that progressively gets.
So
I don't want to say easier because that kind of simplifies it, but it does. The I don't know, the accolades build up.
so let's get a little deeper into that.
Yeah,
All right. So um, this situation happened.
yeah,
Immediately, my decision is: do I use? Do I not use? Do I
right,
cover this up? Do I not? Do I avoid it? Do I block it? Do I? You know what I mean?
right,
And
yeah,
and once I make that decision to kind of get past that part and actually deal with it,
mm-hmm.
well, then I actually have to deal with it,
Right,
right? So I have to identify what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. I have to work through those, right?
right,
So there is a process that happens, and when you process your feelings and you process your thoughts, and because we always want to understand why we're thinking or feeling
oh
a
yeah,
certain
we
way,
want to know ourselves.
right? And so when you get to the end of that, you know yourself better,
Yeah,
and you know that you can actually heal, because
mm-hmm.
that was part of the problem with being in active addiction, is that something would happen and I would constantly feel that thing.
Mm-hmm.
It would never go away because I never dealt with it. I never, you know so so there's definitely a change that happens in a person who goes through something like that, and it can be good or it can be bad, but if you deal with, because if something happened to me when I was in active addiction, I was angry
Mm-hmm.
or I was sad. And that was it.
Right,
You know what I mean? I never went past that. Whereas you could dig deeper and be like, well, why am I sad? Why I'm sad because I miss this person, or
yeah,
I'm scared to go on with my life without this person. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So you can get deeper into some of those feelings and really kind of deal with them, and recovery does that for an addict. It takes you out of that addict mindset, and allows you to grow, and um you don't always see it, and you hear a lot that change is painful.
mm-hmm.
No matter what kind of change it is, it can be painful,
Oh yeah.
because we like the bucket.
Well, yeah,
I don't need to change that.
no,
And
we don't want to upset the status quo.
yeah, something like that, I guess.
No,
Yeah,
we have our sense of normal,
yeah,
and we don't want to
right.
upset
You
that.
know, well, that isn't so bad. Or
Right.
things like that. You tell yourself, um, but yeah, change can be painful, but when you're going through it, you just have to get this mindset of, you know what, when I get to the other end, I'm gonna be better, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be grateful, and I'm gonna be, it, there's just there's I'm gonna have growing, and I'm an adult. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah. Right.
that was the first thing for me. It was like, wow, I'm an adult. I can actually get through this stuff.
I can make adult decisions now.
Yeah, and that's good for recovery, because you want to see progress, and you want to see that you're moving forward in life.
Mm-hmm.
As an addict, because you've been stunted for so long that you think you're just going to be stuck.
Yeah.
And
Well, I was having a conversation with one of my kids a couple days ago, and we were talking about seasons in life and how that changes and how that transpires, and why as a good parent, I'm saying no to certain things until they reach a mature level to handle that themselves. As a good parent, it's like, nope, I know your limitations. You're not ready for that kind of content. You're not ready for that kind of stuff to go into that mess. And so, no, you can't. whether it's it's a film or a game or whatever. It's like, no, you're not ready to handle this. It's like,
Right.
if I were to sit there and throw you into the world right now as a you know early teen and be like, hey, you'll get your own place to live, and you go get your own job, and you go drive. Kids don't have a driver's license yet. Hey, go do all this. That's not good for him. He's not going to be able to learn how to appropriate. And hopefully, I raise them where they have the intelligence to figure that out. But that mature, like, they can't process adult feelings, adult responsibilities, that the maturity levels, and so they have to. They're like, and like you used the word stunted. There's a level where they're not capable of handling certain things because they're still developing. And so, as someone who is a user being stunted, there's an inability to handle certain things, um, and then
while you're using,
while you're in the using, yeah.
Right. See,
And so you go through the recovery process and that level, and now you are more mature in handling things.
be amazed at what you can handle if you just
Yeah.
I think it. I think the key to a lot of that stuff is if you just are able to be transparent about
Mhm.
it. I'm not saying go on TV and be like, this is
Right.
what I'm doing.
Here's all the dirty laundry,
Yeah.
and here's the skeletons in my closet, and here's no, we're not
Here's
doing
my
that.
thoughts.
Right.
But sharing with somebody else and just kind of being transparent is important. In any situation really, but but especially in those storms, that we have in our life.
Well, it's the idea of knowing our limitations. I think that's what kind of one of the to me one of the marks of maturity. And then I got a funny story to go along with it. But one of those maturity is knowing those limitations. I was in college, um, 19, 20, or was I 20? It was around 20. It was between
So a long time ago.
long time ago, years ago.
Yeah.
And to be in all fairness to him, I don't even remember the conversation. I just remember this one exchange that occurred, and it involved my father. He had called me. I was in my dorm at this college where I was going to school, and we were talking on the phone. I forget what the whole content was, but he had asked me a question. I don't even remember the question, but I remember my answer. And my answer to the question from my father was, I don't know. And that was my question. I said, I don't know. And all I hear on the other line is this very excited, yes, 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 yes. It's like, it's on my head. I'm like, what happened? What's going on? You don't know. He's like, I've been waiting years to hear you say you don't know. And as a parent now, it's hilarious because you get these kids and they go through their know-it-all stages, and you're just like, yep. So I'm waiting for that exchange to hear it from my own kids that I don't know. But that idea of going back to that original, what brought that example on was that idea of maturity is knowing our limits and not covering them up. Because we want to hide our limitations. We want to hide our weaknesses. We want to hide. And then
ego, pride.
It's an ego thing, yeah. But it's one of those things where, we're not airing the dirty laundry. We're not sitting there showing the skeletons everywhere. But we are being transparent in the sense of, I can't do this. This is my limitation. This is my limit. This is my inability. This is my my weakness. And being willing to be open about it in such a way that there's a level of maturity that's transpired there, and then
so your weakness is turned into a strength.
Your weakness is turned into a strength,
and the nice thing
yeah.
So as a recovering addict, I fully understand what you're saying, and the benefit of being able to say, I don't know if I want to call it a limitation, but something that I may see as a weakness,
right?
As long as I can say it, it becomes a strength, because then everybody else will help carry me through that, whatever that may be. And that's, I mean, it makes me sad that other people, that people aren't in the program, don't have those kinds of things happen for them.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people try to go through life on their own,
Right.
because they have to be strong, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's okay to be strong, but it's also okay to know that your strength can also be drawn from other places.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what happens in recovery is we have to start drawing strength from other avenues. We can't just draw it from within because we're not that strong. You know.
There's a great thing in Genesis at the creation of mankind and the creation of all things. In Genesis, the Lord has finished everything except one final step, and he sees all that he's created. He says that it's all good, and he looks and he says, he saw that man was alone and that there was no suitable helper for him. And so to paraphrase and make the story even shorter, so the Lord saw that man was alone and realizes that he needs a partner.
Right.
And so God created woman for man. The idea going even expounding further is the idea that God created human relationships,
right,
so that we could come alongside each other, support each other,
yeah,
and to be there. And the whole idea of like raising our families and having working relationships and marriages and all these things, all these relationships that we have, they're for our benefit.
right.
And that we don't have to go through these things. And so when change occurs, we're recognizing that the when changes and difficulties in life happens, the addict's mindset is, I'm going to close myself up or use those for my own purposes, which happens. But the goal is, no, we are here to come alongside you. We are to be a resource for you.
Right.
And then to bring it full circle on what we're doing here and the conversations we're trying to have in the community and to bring people in and listen online, is the idea that the transparency that we're having here is because we want to come beside you and help you in the ways that we can. Again, being that connection and taking our transparencies, and like you say, taking what is a weakness and turning it into a strength.
Right.
And then as other people see that, they come alongside us and they encourage us in our journey, and in turn we get to encourage others in theirs.
Right. That's a beautiful thing.
It's fun.
For me, I think that it's more exciting for me if I can help somebody else do something. I don't always like being helped. I'm, like I said, I'm kind of stubborn about things, but and I become resistant.
Right.
I can close down and try and but in the end, I realized that I can't do a lot of things on my own. I mean, I can do everyday life on my own, but I can't do some things. You just have to have that support, and and you have to change the way you think. You have to change the way that you approach things. There's a lot of different change that happens in that, just so that you can get through something, but then that becomes part of who you are.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're like, wow, I like this person.
Yeah.
You can look in the mirror and be like, I can appreciate who you are today.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're first coming out of it, you look in the mirror and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at that person because you are starting to feel things, and you're starting to think, and you're feeling ashamed of the life that you had lived. Whether it was really bad or it wasn't all that bad, you're still kind of ashamed of it,
Right.
and even just the using part,
Yeah.
And so it's good in recovery to experience change, and it's because you learn who you are. And the goal, in my mind, is that obviously to stay clean, but also to discover and learn who I am as a person. And where I can really go with that, because you start to, like, you'll set goals,
Yeah.
I can do this, and that's changed too.
Right.
Because as you work through those goals, you start to find out your strengths and your weaknesses,
But
and
you're growing as a person,
right,
and that means, and as you grow as a person, you get new strengths and new challenges, new
right,
changes occur. And I love that, because that's like the stories are always progressing. The stories are always moving forward,
right,
and people, as people grow, as they learn, as they become, the idea is, like, even for myself, I've grown up in the church. I grew up in a home that, that was our expectation every single day, and we don't deviate from that. And I've grown up being in youth group every single week. Um, that even for me, I'm not the same person I am now that I was, 2 3 decades ago.
right.
Completely
Oh
different
no.
person, right? Well, see, 3 decades ago I was 9, so
Yeah.
that there, do the math. But I'm not, but even then, like, the college aged person is not the same as the one who has 3 kids.
Right.
And so I've gone through a level of maturity, and strengthening, and should I even say just transformation, that's made me who I am today.
Right.
And that's fun a fun thing to experience, and that growth is exciting. Is it easy? Absolutely not. I hated being a teenager, and waking up in the middle of the night with the leg pains, those stretching leg
Growth.
pains. Oh, I hate those growth pains. They were painful,
Yeah.
but they were necessary for me.
Right.
That growing, that maturing process. And that produced a lot of change in there. But for the people in recovery, for the individuals going through recovery, there's a level of growth and maturity that's taking place, a growing and a strengthening as they are becoming new individuals. And again, you're learning, and so there's an
Right.
excitement there.
And so when I was younger, you always had, like, your grandparents or even your parents would tell you, this is blah, blah 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 blah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They would give you a little nugget of wisdom,
Right.
and you think, wow, I'm smart, I can get, whatever. But so they went through it,
Yeah.
and that's what gave them that wisdom, is
Yeah.
they're trying to help you to not have to go through that same thing.
They're taking part of their story and saying, here.
Right, here, this is, take it for what it is. Well, in recovery, that's the benefit or the bonus about having these men and women who have 20 years of recovery or 30 years of recovery or whatever it is, because they're passing down the wisdom that they have gained over, and
Yeah.
and sometimes, a person like me might be like, whatever, dude,
Right.
but in the end, it's kind of the same process that you go through just in life, only we have a different a different avenue for it, because it's not like in life you sit in these meetings and
Right.
they're like, hey, this is how you do life,
Right.
but recovery does that, and that's probably one of the coolest things that could happen, because
Right.
I don't have just my family or my friends. I have an entire community,
Right.
who will look out for me even when I don't know I need to be looked out for.
Yeah. Well, and the fun part is that they're looking out for you.
Right.
Just at the same time, you're beginning to look out for those that are behind you as well.
Right. It's, you got to give it away.
It's fun. I remember one time. I think I was maybe 12. I forget how old I was. It was preteen years, junior high years, and my grandfather was he was rewiring his house. He had a 19. He had an older house, and he was going through rewiring it, modernizing the wires and the walls and everything. And one time that he was working on it, and so my brother and I got dropped off there to help him rewire the house. And so it was fun, a bunch of boys helping their grandpa rewire. So we were running wires through the whole building, thinking that was just a fun day that we were just playing with grandpa. I didn't find out till like years later why that even happened. And it's because he was trying to rewire his house the week before, and he didn't shut off the power to the house,
Oh, Jesus.
and he knocked himself to the floor while he was rewiring the house. And he called one of his kids and laughing about it. And they're like, "No, we're gonna send you young people there so that you know to do it right." And so we were like his insurance to make sure he does things safely,
Right.
because we don't want to pick him off the floor again.
Right.
But he did. So he let us. He taught us how to rewire the house. Now that does not mean that I am certified I can rewire a house. I don't. I'm no expert.
He also taught you a little bit of how to be humble.
Yes.
I can't do this on my own,
Yeah.
so I need to have.
Yeah.
That's a.
It's a huge thing.
It really is.
And in the process,
Good.
he kept himself safe by keeping us safe. So
Right.
by looking after those that he was teaching and bringing up, he was protecting himself as well.
Right.
And that's kind of this beautiful. I'm going to use the word recovery train. The recovery train is because you have the cars who have gone ahead on the track ahead of you. They're watching out for you, and then you in turn are watching out for those behind you.
Right.
As you're all dealing with the emotions on the track, you're all dealing with life changes and differences and situations and storms, but you're each one is taking care of the other as you're growing in maturity.
Right. And I really love that story, because being humble enough to be able to be like, you know what, I do need this help.
Yeah.
Is probably key in recovery. Is you have to kind of humble yourself. Like, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, some people will go through it on their own, but the tragedy of that is that they don't get what is freely given in that recovery. And it's hard to explain, but you miss so you're driving down the road and you miss everything that's going on around you.
Yeah.
Like you miss the trees, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're just on this path, and that's it. And that's not. I'm not. You can still grow.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that without seeing the beauty in life and being grateful for the things that along the road, you can't get to this higher
you're
understanding.
You're missing. You're missing a lot.
You're at like this high level of something or whatever. But
have you ever had those moments where you're driving on the road and for hours or whatever, and maybe even for minutes, you start driving, and then however long down the road you look up and you're like, I mean, not even looking up, it just kind of clicks on you, and you're all of a sudden you're immediately aware, and you're thinking to yourself, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I mean, because I've talked to other people, I know it's occurring. It's not just me. I've gone through this, but it's like all of a sudden it's like it's like somebody flips a switch and you're like, wait a minute, how did I arrive here? I don't remember any stop signs. I don't remember any stoplights. I don't remember any cars on the road.
Right.
I mean, obviously they were there, but that automatic pilot kicks in, and then you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, how? I don't know how I arrived at this. And then you're panicking because you're like, did I miss anything important?
Right.
Am I gonna get a ticket in the mail? I mean, it's happened, but it is one of those things too, where it's like when we get so closed off to those other things, we're not looking out for those around us. We miss those details, and and that's an important thing is we're missing out so much on the journey that is meant for us to observe, to experience and enjoy or go through and to have those experiences. But we can, when we miss the numbing effect that stuff can have on us, we're right, and we have that aha moment kicks in.
That's what. So riding motorcycles is one of those deals for me where I am fully aware of everything around me, and that's what I love about it. Because you have to be,
Yep.
But it's when I'm in the car, I see the road and I'm deep in my own thoughts, and I don't really pay so much attention. When I'm on the bike, it's the exact opposite. I'm fully aware, and I'm very hypersensitive to everything that's around me, and because of that, I'm experiencing that as I go through it.
Well, and there's a lot of control in there too, because for me, like that's You're riding a bike is me like driving a standard. I love
Stick
the,
shift.
the stick shift. I love that extra level of this sounds really weird. I love that extra level of control
Right.
over the vehicle I'm in.
Yeah.
And being able to read the road and to read other drivers and the weather
Right.
and how all that plays into just driving a
Decisions.
standard. And it's fun. But when you get into an automatic and you're just sitting there and you just go and you wake up and you're like, wait a
You
minute.
got cruise control.
Cruise control. That is scary right
is.
there.
Yeah.
But it is true. I mean, because this is, and that's that idea of where we we're a people, humanity. We are made to be um in control. I don't mean to be controlling, but we're made to be in control. The Bible tells us that we are to have self control over our minds and our thinking. Like we're not just given to random bouts of emotion, but there's a level of control that we should have over us, and that anything that takes away that control from us, it's a negative thing. Like when I'm gonna give up control of my mind or my emotions and say, okay, nope, I'm gonna throw it on the wind and just do whatever willy nilly with it. No, I'm supposed to have control over my faculties, and my thinking and the way I process things,
Right.
and that's such a key thing, you know. And
Well, and in order to change that, you have to practice it, which isn't easy
no,
because you literally have to tell yourself, this is what I would normally do, but let's try something different.
yes,
And so you reprogram yourself in that way, where you know you have to practice it, and that's what recovery does.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of a over and over. Let's do the same thing over and over, and and it's always a little bit different, but
Mm-hmm.
you're always. And the reason that you do that is so that it becomes habit, and then I don't have to think about that so much anymore, right. And I can move on to the next thing that needs to change or that needs to be,
Yes,
processed, whatever. And but my hardest thing was reprogramming my thoughts.
yeah,
I was probably overreactive about things, or emotional in
mm-hmm.
some sort of way, or just had an attitude of the hell with everybody else or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had to kind of reprogram that, where it was like, okay, I can't think that I need to go use in order to
Right.
deal with this. Well, how do you do that? Well, I have to keep telling myself that I don't need to use.
Right.
Okay, well then I have to replace that with something. What do I
Right.
replace it with? I need to call my sponsor because
Yeah.
he probably knows. So that was originally the kind of the thought process. I have to call my sponsor because he might direct me better. I have to go to a meeting. They might help me direct better. I have to read the book because it has direction in there, right?
Yeah.
And then once I've read that direction or heard that direction or whatever multiple times, I can start using that,
Right.
And so it's a progression of the way you think, and it becomes easier, and I want, so that would be something I would want other addicts to understand, is that it does become easier.
Yes.
It's very hard at first because there's a lot coming at you, you just have to have the one thing that is probably the furthest from your mind, but it's patience. You have to have patience with yourself, and allow yourself the ability to learn and to make different different decisions, but also different thought processes.
Yeah.
And that causes change, which allows for other change to happen in your life. And those changes, no matter how scary they are, will always make what you on the other end of that, you'll always feel better about making that change. So I don't know. I'm grateful that I didn't get in my own way.
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot. There were times I got in my own way, but I'm grateful that I didn't get in my own way enough to stunt me.
Right.
So that I could grow.
Well, and that's an important thing too. And I like how you say, it starts out really hard, but if you keep at it,
Right.
and it's, I'm trying to better my health, which means I'm going to the gym several times a week to sit there and, I'm lifting things that
Okay.
2 years ago I would not have been able to lift. You know,
Right.
but it's taken me that amount of time to progressively exercise and get myself up to that point. You know, I can pick up my son, I can pick up my wife, I can pick up my brother. I'm lifting at such a degree where it's not a grievous effort anymore. Starting out running, half a mile was really hard, right? now
Half a
now
block would be ours.
now it's 2.5 miles.
Right on.
And so, but it's one of those things where you have to grow and get those muscles where they operate at that thing. And the same thing, the mind is a muscle, and so your
Right.
thoughts have been trained to handle change, to handle life, to handle situations in a certain way. And so for those in the middle of recovery or starting recovery, like, you're learning you're exercising a new muscle. And so as you work it, it will be hard initially, but it does get easier the more you exercise it, the
Right.
more you go in that new thinking, that new direction. um that's a major way, and how important that is, and which I think is really wonderful.
Right. So just to kind of I don't know how close you are to wanting to close this off, but
Getting pretty close.
so I go in with a mindset
Mhm.
that my higher power is not going to give me anything more than I can handle.
Right.
And when I do that, it allows me to understand that I can handle this.
Right.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
And so, and it doesn't mean that I can handle it alone. It just means that I will get through this.
Yes.
And when you go into a mindset for change of, that there's nothing you can't handle because it wouldn't be put on your plate,
Right.
you're going to get through it.
Yeah.
So that's part of that whole changing your thought process, whereas before I go into change, like, I can't do this,
Right.
why would, those were times when I would cuss God out,
Yep.
like, why would you put this on my plate? I can't deal with this. I can't do this. But the truth of the matter is I made it through,
Well,
whether it was the best way or not.
There's a whole passage that says we are transformed by the renewing of our minds,
Mm.
which is fascinating, that our lives are made completely different by changing how we decide to think.
Right.
By changing the way we think, we become new people.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing that we don't need to be scared of that.
Right.
And that's an important thing. And so I think that's really
there's a saying in the program that says that you have an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
So I think that's self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But what that means is that you go into things being grateful, and that's where your core starts from. You start from that point, and then if you start from there, everything else just seems a little bit easier. Because you're coming from a point of view of, I am grateful for what is in my life.
Yeah.
So this is not going to change that.
Right.
So let's go ahead and tackle this, and get through it and change. Change is just it's just a painful thing sometimes.
It is.
It really is. And it's because we're used to who we are.
Yeah.
So then, you're being edged to change, and and it's like, do I really have to do this? Because I get comfortable in the way things are, and in the way I think, or or stubborn, or whatever it is. But when it comes right down to it, I'm willing to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things too I've learned is just, one, change is inevitable. It always comes. You can't stop it. So all I can do is change my attitude about it,
Right.
and then think about how it impacts others.
Right.
And then that just leads me on this whole pathway. So
I'm definitely resistant, though.
Yeah.
I will tell you that much. I will resist change for as long as I can sometimes. And it's not like I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I don't, I
Yeah,
don't want to do this or anything else. Just that
it's a
it's,
personality thing.
it really, I just am resistant at times. And then, until it gets to a point where it's kind of forced
Yeah.
out of me. And it's like, all right, fine, let's do, you know.
Well, and that's the fun thing too, because like I grew up as a teenager.
Hmm.
Don't change a thing. I
Right,
did not like change. If I had a friend who was moving across town, I hated that.
right,
How dare you move?
yeah,
Like that's change. I don't like this.
right,
Whereas an adult, I've come to the conclusion like, okay, change is gonna happen.
right.
Can I slow it down? like
What?
I don't want change to go so fast.
See, and the thing is that when you're looking at change, you're looking at the unknown
Yeah.
because something is changing, so you don't know,
Yes.
what
That's
it's going to
exactly
be,
it.
and if you can kind of conquer that whole idea of, well, the unknown is always going to kind of be better than
Yeah.
what you thought, because generally that's
Yeah.
what happens. Not always. I'm not saying,
We don't need to be
yeah,
afraid of it.
right, because you know. Why wouldn't you want something different sometime? You got to shake yourself up
Yes.
to keep yourself actively, I don't know how to say it, actively growing in your
Yeah.
mind, in your heart,
That's a great way
in
of
your,
putting it.
yeah,
Actively growing. We're gonna wrap up here if that's okay,
that's
and
perfect.
we want to honor their time, honor your time as well. And but just the idea that when it comes to change, that the actively growing and that it is important and that it's beneficial for us.
Transparency.
Transparency.
Transparency and change is a great thing.
Yep.
Support. I just want to add those
Yeah.
to
No,
that, just
it's
so
good.
that we,
This
yeah,
has been
because
a really fun conversation.
right.
Yep. But no, that transparency, that support, come alongside of another, and really, I mean, we're going through life together. So.
Embracing it.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for taking your time to listen to these, and we'll see you next time.
It has that. Did you get it?
I think so. I think so. If not, I can come up the whole end.
It doesn't let us know.
Well, sweet.
We weren't supposed to.